Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're on let's say, an aromatic mission. We're tracing the journey of Masataka Taketsuru. This is the man who basically walked away from a centuries-old family sake tradition in Japan.
Right.
He travels to Scotland, learns the ropes of whiskey making, and then comes back to found Japan's entire whiskey industry.
Quite the story. And our focus today, the end point of that journey in a way, is Nikka From The Barrel, a really remarkable whiskey.
Exactly. We want to really understand how those cultural roots, that strictness Taketsuru brought with him, shaped this industry in this specific bottle.
Yeah, it's a great way to see how tradition meets innovation, I suppose. The sources we have give us a fantastic look at his background and some really detailed notes on the whiskey itself. It shows how that almost like religious adherence to quality defined everything.
So our mission today, unpack Taketsuru's rules, figure out what Scotland taught him, and then really dissect the flavors in this iconic Japanese dram. Let's start with the man himself, Masataka Taketsuru, born 1894, often called the father of Japanese whiskey.
And you really can't understand him without understanding where he came from. His family, they were deep into brewing sake, a tradition stretching way back to the 1700s.
Wow.
And this wasn't just any sake. We're talking high craft. You know, sake itself has this incredibly long history, maybe 1,500 years. It demands the absolute best rice, the purest mountain water. For his family, it wasn't just a job. It was, well, a devotion.
The sources really emphasize that, this intense focus on quality. It wasn't about churning stuff out.
Not at all.
Taketsuru learned early on that real quality is hard. It's demanding, needs total commitment. And his father apparently used to say, the brewer's soul is reflected in the sake he makes.
That phrase is key. It's almost the philosophical bedrock, not just for sake, but for what Japanese whiskey became. Because that commitment, it went beyond just ingredients.
How so?
Well, traditionally, the master brewer, the toji, would actually live in isolation during the brewing season, cut off.
Really? Isolated?
Yeah. It was this physical and almost spiritual discipline to eliminate distractions, ensure complete focus on the sake. Taketsuru grew up seeing that absolute dedication is what shapes the final product.
Okay, but hang on. How does that translate? I mean, that meticulous, isolated, almost monastic approach for small batch sake. How do you apply that to whiskey, which is, a much more industrial, scientific process, right?
That's the fascinating part, the pivot. He didn't try to replicate the sake process exactly. He took the ethos, that unwavering belief in quality, in the environment, in the process being everything.
And applied it elsewhere.
Exactly. Instead of just continuing the family line, he got hooked on Scotch whiskey. He saw that it, too, was a product of its environment, of extreme technical rigor, different process, same core philosophy.
Which leads him to Scotland. The timing was right. The 1918 English-Japanese alliance allowed travel.
Right.
And he ends up at Glasgow University, becomes the first Japanese person ever to formally study whiskey distillation. But he wasn't just hitting the books.
No, not at all. He insisted on practical hands-on training. And this is where the foundation for Nikka today was really laid. Our research points to 3 key Scottish distilleries. Crucial experience.
Okay, where did he go?
First, Hazelburn, that's in Campbelltown. Gave him a taste of that classic, rich, kind of heavy malt style.
Right, Campbelltown's known for that.
Then, up to Seistiside, Craigalachie, the heartland of Scotland's lighter, more floral, fruity malts, a completely different profile.
So heavy and then light. What was the third?
The third stop was arguably the most influential for later on, Lagavulin, on Islay.
Peat country.
Exactly. That's where he learned the art of working with peat smoke, that heavy, phenolic character. So by training at these 3 places, Campbelltown, Speyside, Islay, he absorbed these distinct regional styles, heavy, light, peated. He developed this incredibly broad understanding of how different stills, different processes create wildly different results. That was the blueprint he took back home.
So he returns to Japan, armed with the Scottish whiskey secrets, and also brings his Scottish wife, Jessie Rita.
Yes, Rita, an important part of the story, too.
But before Nikka, he first worked for someone else, right? Suntory.
That's right. The big player, Suntory, hired him. They knew he had this unique expertise. And he delivered. He used that technical knowledge from Scotland and successfully manufactured genuine grain whiskey in Japan. First time ever, 1924.
Yeah.
Huge step. Proved it could be done.
But then there was a split. Why?
Well, here's where that brewer's soul thing comes back in. Taketsuru wasn't just aiming for commercially viable whiskey or simple blends. His passion, his commitment, it was laser focused on making truly world-class single malt whiskey.
And Suntory wasn't quite there yet.
Apparently not. They weren't ready to invest in that kind of uncompromising, perhaps less immediately profitable path at that time, so he left. He needed to pursue his own vision.
Which meant finding the perfect location.
Yes. He was searching for a spot in Japan that could essentially replicate the ideal Scottish conditions. You know, the pure water, the damp air, the right temperature fluctuations.
And he lands on Hokkaido. Establishes Yoichi Distillery in 1934. Now, this seems counterintuitive from a business perspective.
Totally.
Hokkaido's way up north. It's remote. Miles and miles from the big customer hubs like Tokyo or Osaka. Why create such a logistical headache?
Because for Taketsuru, the environment wasn't just part of the equation, it was the equation. Logistics came second. He prioritized the water quality, the cold climate. He even insisted on finding local peat sources. He was literally trying to recreate a Scottish microclimate.
He believed the quality would overcome the distance.
Precisely. He was willing to be isolated, just like those old sake brewers, if it meant getting the spirit absolutely right. He believed if the product was truly exceptional, people would find it.
And history proved him right. Yoichi is still Nikka's flagship distillery, right? Considered one of the best in Asia, if not the world.
Absolutely. It's the cornerstone. And Nikka today, well, it's huge. Japan's second largest producer. You find their stuff everywhere in Japan. And they now own distilleries back in Scotland, too, like Ben Nevis. It's a full circle, a real validation of his initial, very stubborn vision.
And his legacy lives on in the names, too. Sur Deluxe, Taketsuru Pure Malt.
Yep, named right after him.
Okay, let's pivot now to the bottle that many people know Nikka for globally.
Yeah.
Nikka from the Barrel. You can spot it a mile off. That distinctive short square bottle. And that high alcohol strength.
Yeah, it's iconic. And it is complex. It's a blended Japanese whiskey, but that high strength is deliberate. It comes out at 51.4% ABV.
Wow.
And importantly, it's non-chill filtered, meaning they don't strip out those tiny natural oils and compounds during bottling. That adds texture, mouthfeel, depth.
And the high proof also means, for you, the drinker, you can add water. It's almost designed for it, lets you explore it.
This only offers value in that sense, too. You get more intensity and the option to dilute to your preference.
So let's get into the blend itself, what's actually in there. We know it uses malt whiskey from Yoichi and Miyagikyo, Nikka's two main distilleries.
Right. But the really interesting technical bit is the grain component. It does include grain whiskey, but it's distilled using coffee stills. Now, in Scotland, traditionally, coffee stills, those continuous column stills, are used for making lighter, often neutral grain spirit for blends. Malt whiskey comes from pot stills, a batch process.
Okay.
But here's the Nikka twist. That grain element, it's actually malt whiskey made from malted barley, but produced in a continuous coffee still at their Miyagikyo distillery.
Okay. So that blurs the lines definition-wise, doesn't it?
It really does. Technically, it contains both malt whiskey from pot stills, Yoichi Miyagikyo, and malt whiskey from a coffee still, Miyagikyo. That's why you'll often see it referred to, maybe slightly confusingly, as a blended malt whiskey or vatted malt in some contexts, even though there's that coffee still element.
So they're using the efficiency of the coffee still, but with malted barley, to create a specific profile.
Exactly. It likely gives them a cleaner, perhaps slightly lighter malt spirit profile from the coffee still, which they can then blend masterfully with the richer, heavier pot still malts from Yoichi. It's this technical choice, this specific combination, that helps create that intense yet incredibly balanced character that keeps winning awards.
That makes sense. So complex spirit blend and then maturation. What kind of casks?
A mix, primarily bourbon casks, which give you vanilla, caramel, sweetness, but also sherry casks, adding dried fruits, spice, and depth. That combination is key to the final intense, rounded profile. It's genuinely a standout whiskey, especially for its price. If you want an intense, well-put-together Japanese dram, this is a great place to look.
Right. Let's talk about actually tasting it then. That 51.4% ABV is no joke.
No, it commands respect. But like we said, it invites experimentation. Neat, it's powerful, add a splash of water, and things start to open up.
Let's start with the official tasting notes. What does Nikka say we should expect?
Pretty classic profile, actually, but intense. On the nose, dry sherry notes, orange peel, some vanilla spices. On the palate, more of that dark fruit character, caramel and nuts, and definitely a hint of smoke and oak in there. Integrated, but present.
And the finish. Sounds like it would stick around.
Oh, it does. It's described as long, dry, even slightly bitter, with sophisticated notes like cocoa and spicy wood. It lingers.
Okay, standard notes are helpful, but then we found these other notes from a taster identified as Tante Anne, who apparently spent a lot of time in Japan, and her descriptions are, well, there's something else.
They really are far more evocative. She starts by saying it smells Japanese, like old wooden Japanese home.
Wow. I mean, what does that even mean? But you can almost picture it, can't you? That scent of aged wood, maybe slightly damp air.
It's an incredible sensory connection. It speaks volumes about the non-chill filtering, the high proof interacting with the wood, maybe that specific climate at Yoichi or Miyagikyo. It's tasting the place, not just the ingredients.
And then she pulls out these other notes that are just wild.
Yeah.
Bubblegum.
Right, bubblegum. And Solo, that's a Norwegian orange soda, apparently. Evaporated milk. Sweet caramel chews. It's almost whimsical.
But then it gets really specific again. Minty sherry oak and plastic bags.
Plastic bags. You have to stop there. Why write that? It's bizarre. But it suggests something, right? A specific, maybe slightly sharp or artificial aromatic note that emerges only because the spirit is so concentrated and complex, it resists easy labels.
It shows it's not just simple vanilla or fruit. There's a deeper strangeness.
Exactly. Those odd notes often point to real depth and quality. It's not a flaw, it's character. Wood aging pushed to an interesting edge.
And her finish notes are just as layered. Walnuts, the sharpness of raspberry seeds, then bittersweet like gala apples, and finally dry with pine and cocoa smokiness. You really get a journey in the glass.
And that journey changes depending on how you drink it. We mentioned adding water, but what about the traditional Japanese serve, the mizuwari? Lots of water, lots of ice.
Right, very common in Japan. Why is that so popular there, culturally speaking?
Well, historically, it might have started as a way to make rougher spirits more drinkable. But it evolved into a really popular, refreshing style, especially with meals. It allows you to enjoy whiskey over a longer period, alongside food, without getting overwhelmed by the alcohol. It's about integration.
So applying that to Nikka from the barrel, diluting it so much, does it just wash it out?
Surprisingly, no. According to the notes, the mizuwari made it much gentler, obviously, but it didn't kill the complexity. Instead, it seemed to pull out different nuances. Subtle things like brioche bread, bright cherry notes, a kind of soft, chocolatey smoke.
So the underlying structure is strong enough to handle that dilution and still show character.
That's what it suggests. It shows the blend is fundamentally solid and well-built.
Yeah.
And if you look at comparisons, the sources noted it shares some DNA with certain robust Scottish whiskies, like Aberlour or Teenage.
Which brings it back to Taketsuru's goal.
Exactly. He wanted to capture the soul of Scotch, but refine it with that Japanese dedication to purity and balance. And this whiskey seems to embody that.
So wrapping this up.
Yeah, to bring it all together, I think what we see is that the global success and the sheer complexity of something like Nikka from the Barrel, it really flows directly from the foundation Taketsuru built almost a century ago. That lesson from his sake brewing father quality is tough, it needs focus, maybe even isolation, that directly led to his uncompromising choice of Yoichi, the environment first. Everything you taste in that bottle, the good, and maybe even the slightly weird notes, stems from that absolute commitment.
And it leaves us with a thought, doesn't it? Thinking about those incredibly specific, almost personal tasting notes. Old wooden Japanese homes, plastic bags. If Taketsuru's father was right, if the maker's soul is reflected in the spirit, well, how do these tiny granular sensory details, the smell of an old house, a hint of pine, that strange plastic tang, how do they reflect the soul, not just of the man, but of that isolated, unique place where Japanese whiskey truly began? Something for you to perhaps ponder next time you pour yourself a dram.